Metzora continues from where we left off last time in Tazria, talking about strange things that happen to our bodies, some of them on the skin of our arms and legs, and some, well, below the belt. Some of the laws and practices described here were confusing and controversial for people back in the biblical days and remain that way for many of us today. In fact, parts of this parsha are downright PG-13. But whether you see the Torah as a literal manual about how to live, or whether you look to it for spiritual everyday inspiration, Metzora can be an interesting place to go and learn about our bodies and ourselves. Remember that strange disease called tzara'at? If a red or white spot appeared on a person's body, they would call up the priest to come over and give it a look and diagnose the disease. If the priest concluded that it was tzara'at, then the person was sent outside the community. The priest then visited the person every 7 days to see if the disease had begun to heal, and when it did, the person was to perform a cleansing ritual, bring special sacrifices, and was then welcomed back into the community. Doctors today can't make heads or tails of this disease. Some scholars now call it scale disease, but for the longest time people thought that the Torah was talking about leprosy. This is actually a misnomer. The first Greek physician, Hippocrates, grouped together a bunch of different skin diseases under a single name, lepra, probably because they all have some scaly appearance. Then, in the 9th century, a physician made a translation error. He read lepra as leprosy, and since then, people all over the world have thought the Bible was talking about leprosy. For hundreds of years, lepers were put in colonies and separated from other people because it was thought that they had a contagious biblical disease. No, leprosy is not really contagious. Not a bad example of how much damage a single mistaken word can have. One of the dead giveaways that the Torah isn't talking about something with an easy scientific definition is that tzara'at isn't just a skin disease. In the Torah, it can appear in the fabric of one's clothes or on the walls of houses. It looked like a dark green or dark red mold that went deep into the fabric of the cloth or beyond the surface of the plaster and into the stones of the house. At first, the priest would attempt to remove the moldy threads or stones, but if this didn't work to stop the infection, then the clothing was burned and the house was demolished. So what is the cause of this scale disease, moldy fabric, or fungus on the walls? What is the Torah talking about? One explanation is that someone who is gossip-mongering and speaking in hurtful ways, speaking lashon hara, evil tongue, was first warned with moldy walls. If they didn't get the message, the fungus moved to their clothes. And if they still didn't get it, then finally it showed up on their bodies. Harmful speech can force people out of their homes, cause them to lose their possessions, and ultimately harm their physical health. And once the damage is done, it is very hard to fix. No wonder the smitten person had to spend some time on the outside of the community. In the isolation and solitude beyond the city limits without people to talk to, a person might be able to think more clearly about how they had been using speech. Words are how the world was created in the very beginning by God. And God said, "Let there be light." With words, we humans build our whole social world. Words are the building blocks of our relationships. When we misuse them, then everything, our homes, our property, even our bodies are in danger. The power of both life and death, say the sages, is in the tongue. We are no longer warned by moldy walls or scaly skin, but perhaps reading this Torah portion will encourage us to pause and think carefully before we speak.